this is how reflective practice forms a very important learning journey. There are a number of hands being raised that I see. I just want to know if those questions need to be kindly provided. Yes. If it's about, I just want to share the PPT, and this would be shared with everyone. With regard to questions, I think we can take them towards the end unless there is something pressing. Perhaps I would request the organizers to speak. We move to the next aspect. Reflection in practice. My voice is a bit slow. I need to be louder. Okay, I'll just try. Reflection in practice for improving practice. Now, reflective practice has a major role in improving the practice, especially when it comes to academic, when it comes to teaching. Unless we are able to create this democratic environment, which is not that of fault finding, but which is that of learning, perhaps reflection cannot take place. So, a very safe and a secure and a warm and a welcoming environment is something which is a necessity for reflection. So, but reflection also contributes to creating such an environment which is centered around learner and learner. So, if this becomes a reflection, becomes a part of an institutional culture, where right from the leadership to every member of the staff engages in the exercise of reflection, perhaps we're all focusing. Key focus then becomes learning. And when learning becomes a focus, every communication, every interaction becomes worth learning. Then learning is not limited to subjects, learning is not limited to events, small conversation will also be. Reflection in practice really makes one innovative, confident, engaged, and responsive. Because with every event, if we are reflecting, we are bound to do that really add in a lot of confidence and engage, make us more engaged and more responsive towards what we are doing. Reflection breaks isolation of practice. And I want to share some of my thoughts on this. And I would request to also go through this researcher and scholar from Harvard, the Center for Leadership Learning, called Richard L. Ward. And he says privacy of practice leads to isolation, and isolation is envy. I share this in the context of how important it is to really have group reflections also apart from individual reflection in breaking this isolation of practice. In teacher education particularly, and in the entire field of education, there is this isolation of practice that we have. And when I say isolation of practice, it is about, as a teacher, I'm teaching in my own classroom with my own set of students, that I'm not open to anybody else. When I say anybody else, from my peer group or from my senior staff, from the management group or the leadership group, it could be the principal, the vice principal, or anybody for that matter, a supervisor, a head of the department, or any peer walking into my room. It really makes one feel uncomfortable. And because of that discomfort or because of that insecurity that we have in the field of education, it's a lot of isolation of that. What I am doing, I would not want to share it with the others. What others are doing, they would not want to share it with me. I feel insecure and challenged at the very idea of somebody observing the classroom. And this actually leads to isolation. This actually leads to people avoiding forming networks for the fear of criticism or for the fear of maybe being laughed at. And therefore, Richard Elmore brings up a very beautiful concept. How do you engage in this practice of reflection, which is not a deficit model, which is not about finding or spotting flaws, which is about coming together and which is about emphasizing on improving the clarity of the picture. And when I say improving the clarity of the picture, it is about making your objectives more clear, making your own practice more unified. How do you do this? You do this through an exercise of collective observation or self-observation, and this kind of reflection really helps one. The next part now. Yeah, so the second part is about the second section that and then I'm going to relate it about academic leadership. So, what is academic leadership? The concept of academic leadership, the characteristics of academic leadership, the functions or the roles of the academic leader. That is something I'm going to talk about in this section on academic leadership. And then we're going to relate, in the sense, how being a reflective practitioner actually supports or actually is necessary for becoming an academic. Because unless one is a reflective practitioner, you cannot have your staff or engage your entire team into the exercise of reflective practice. And unless we are engaged into the exercise of reflective practice, our institutions cannot grow. So academic leadership is about how, as a leader, you're helping your institutions go into learning organization. And a learning organization would be an organization, if I put it in the terms of what Peter Senge says, where we are working for the personal mastery of every member of the organization, where every member of the organization comes together, where there is a shared vision, there is team learning, where there is challenging of one's own mental model, where there is systems. So these are the aspects of a learning organization. And academic leadership is about developing or transforming your organizations into learning organizations. We look at some of these aspects of academic leadership. A major function of an academic leader is to have an impact on student learning. Because I think when we talk about leadership in academic institutions, there is some disturbance coming. I would request the host to really mute the mic.
આમાં નહીં થાય આ મીટિંગમાં નેક્સ્ટ મીટિંગમાં કરવું મારું માઇક ચાલુ
A major function of academic is to impact student learning and progress and raise the standard of teachers, teaching, research, and the overall staff. So, Peter Senge, when he talks about personal mastery, he mentions that unless an organization contributes towards the development of all its members, that organization cannot. And academic leadership looks at, am I audible? I have a message saying that voice is not audible.
Ma'am, your voice is coming clearly, ma'am. Please carry on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, for academic leadership, it is about looking into the development of all the members of the organization. How to really do that, we'll look at it next. It's also about assisting in redesigning the operational processes of institutes, whether the academic institutes, because when we talk of academic institutes, it could be a school, it could be a college, it could be a university or department. So it's about redesigning the operational processes so that they become agile, they become flexible, they are open to change, they are more efficient and tolerant towards the new ways of learning. And Ramsden puts up following characteristics of academic leaders, and so this is more in the context of higher education. So since most of us here are into higher education or are wanting to be into, he talks about leadership in teaching. So once again, it's about leadership for transforming teaching learning processes. He talks about leadership in research. As an institute of higher education, we are expected to contribute towards research and development, and therefore, how am I leading my staff towards research? Developing a strategic vision and network, which is very important for any leader in the educational setup or outside education. So the vision that you have and how you network through so as to achieve that vision, I think is very important to the academy. Collaborative and motivational in terms of because motivational leadership, but it's more about how I'm promoting the development and growth of every member of the organization. So how do you collaborate and how do you promote? How do you kind of appreciate and how do you motivate your members of your organization? The fifth is the fair and the efficient management. The entire administrative machinery that has to support academics. How efficient is that machine? How supportive is that machine? That is also very important to academic. Sixth is the development and recognition of performance. There has to be a system of free and a very fair system of appraisal that really recognizes the good work, that makes people accountable for their work. And unless a system or a provision of such nature is there in what else, what people into performance, putting make people more determined towards learning. The seventh and the very important skill is about how you communicate horizontally and also vertically in the hierarchy across institutions, amongst different institutions. So interpersonal skills are also very important. There are seven skills or seven characteristics which are key to academic leaders. Am I not audible? Okay. Now this is one research that I'm wanting to share with you. This is a research by Vivian Robinson. She's a scholar from New Zealand, and she does a meta-analysis of 27 leadership studies, which is linking practices with improved student learning. And she identifies 5 key practices, leadership practices, which make an impact or highest impact on student learning. Of all the 5 practices that she identifies through this meta-analysis, uh, she she uh, she calculates an effect size of each of these uh, uh, practices that have come up. So while all the 5 practices are very important, the practice which is found to be most important is that about promoting and participating in teacher learning and development. Why I quote this is, as an academic leader, the key role of an academic leader is promoting and participating in the development of your staff, in the development. So if I'm a head of the department, if I'm a vice chancellor, if I'm a principal of a college, how do I engage into the professional development of my staff is my academic leadership. How do I engage into my own professional development is my academic leadership. So how are we promoting and participating in the development of the teachers as their learning and development? I think is your academic leadership. The second is then establishing goals and expectation. The third is about planning, coordinating, evaluating, teaching, and correcting. The fourth is resourcing strategically. And the fifth is ensuring an orderly and supportive environment. So while all the 5 are important, of all the 5, promoting and participating in teacher learning. Getting into the exercise of, now how do you promote and participate unless you've done this exercise of assessing your staff needs, unless you've engaged in the exercise of assessment, observation, review, reflection, perhaps will not be able to promote their development. So, even more important than goals and setting goals and expectations is contributing to the development of the staff. That was, and then a number of other researchers also that talk about the role of academic leaders in contributing towards personal mastery of their own staff, and how that goes a long way in improving the quality of education and education. Academic leaders, so how do you do that? That you have to improve your own institutions, improve the quality. What is it that you do as academic? Academic leaders focus on transforming one mechanized teaching and assessment. We have to come together as academic really look into what and how so, and really break that cycle of mechanization and make classes more engaging. Low professional motivation and passionate engagement. So it's not about completion of syllabus or topic, but it's more about how do we engage with our students. Mechanized office settings to learning organizations. So institutions, how are they? An institution becomes a learning organization only if it has within its processes a design mechanism of reflection at all levels. And an institution that does not engage in the process of self-assessment, in the process of reflection, cannot become a learning organization. So it ceases to be a learning organization, rather limits itself to be an educational office, you can say that. Break the isolation within and amongst faculty. So it is the institutional culture that is set up as an academic leader that would decide whether faculty would come together, engage with each other, learn from each other and learn with each other. And the last part is collating data. It's very important to have evidence-based discussions on that, because without evidence, if we are talking, we are talking more subjective, and subjective dialogues or talks or reflections would lead to ego clashes. So unless we have objective tools of assessment, unless we have objective evidence-based data on had a great instinct data and interpret it and use that way to colleges of your institute, perhaps transform them into running organizations. This is another aspect of academic leadership, where academic leaders influence at three levels, which is influencing people, influencing policy, and influencing process. And when I say policy, this need not be seen at a macro level. You have school-based policies, college-based policies, university policies. So policies or departmental policies could also be seen at a micro level. So at whatever level you are leading, you look at the three aspects: people, policy, practices, and your processes. Once again, I want to confirm if my voice is heard. I have few people saying there's a break of voice. Is it audible? Thank you. Now we look at these three aspects very. I'm also looking at the watch. We have the second section also coming up, and question answer also remain. Yes. Policies. Now these some of the aspects, these three slides that now I'm going to talk about on policy, practice, and people. These are some of my learning which I have gathered as a part of my own professional practice engagement with schools. And these are some of the learning that I've picked up from schools. These are, you can say, best practices or experiences that I have made through my interaction with school principals in their leadership. So emphasizing learning rather than syllabus knowledge. This is one little experience that I had visiting a very remote rural school in Himachal Pradesh, a very small school with 10 children, but the kind of arrangement that the head teacher had made, it comes from, and there are a number of researchers also that really meant this, but this learning comes right from the head teacher's entire redesigning of the school curriculum, of the textbooks, of the seating arrangements, and of the engagement with the children, owing to the kind of geographical and social challenges that the school face. And the head teacher very simplistically mentioned that for me the curriculum is what my children want to study. So because I have multi-grade teaching, I cannot go by textbooks and subjects. I need to go by concepts, and therefore I have rearranged the entire textbooks and the syllabi, mapping concept to concept from one grade to another. And then my emphasis is on learning rather than completion. Challenging, of course, but this is how some leaders have taken up their leadership and redesign, use their academic freedoms to redesign things that suit learning. Second aspect is the second point that I mentioned. This is a little qualitative made up at the school. Child as a subject rather than an object. So child voice is important. So I am addressing most of the time, teaching becomes mechanized in the sense that we are more emphasizing on engaging with the subjects than engaging with the child. So I'm becoming a physics, a biology, a maths, a commerce, a competency teacher. I at times forget that I am not to engage. The subjects are only a medium of engagement. My major focus has been the child. So when I see child as a subject, or the learner as a subject and not the object. It is about keeping the learner at the center than the subject. Third is the critical consciousness in place of passive engagement, which is about awareness, initiative taking rather than self-appropriation of things. So, how do I, my entire engagement with the institution, with my teaching, with my children, or with learners, comes from a place of conscience, and that really helps critically engage with it. Empathetic, interactive relationships, shared vision where there is participatory discussion and decision making, and learning is not just for children or learners; it is for all, for teachers, for parents, community, for the heads of the institution, the management. Everyone in the process is unless the institution has this as a mindset, as a policy, the institution cannot. These are some of the processes and practices once again picked up as a part of the learning exercises taken up by different heads of institutions. Class-wise pedagogy team, one of the institutions that I happened to visit, they formed class-wise pedagogy team of teachers. So once in every 10 days, these teachers come together. They have recorded their observations of their interaction with every child in the classroom based on their time or the subjects in which they are engaging. And then they share in a small group, they share all these experiences. So it's child 1 that is being discussed about by teacher 1, teacher 2, teacher 3, teacher 4, teacher 5. So all 5 teachers are really giving their reflections or observations on the learning of one child, and also of the gaps or the challenges that they have. And then they are interacting with each other for how to improve the learning experiences for the child. So this is how class-wise pedagogy teams are formed. And this CPT also helps them to reflect on the learning of the child, at the same time reflect their engagement with the child. This is one of the practice which is prevalent in one of the schools in Delhi, government school in faculty meeting, regular faculty meetings twice a month. We have faculty meetings in colleges, in institutions, in departments, university departments, or every other educational organization. But largely our faculty meetings are restricted to conduct of an organization or of the organization, or an event or examination, or any phase of the college organizational task, rather than a faculty meeting being conducted for the improvement of every member of the school. We hardly have a faculty meeting that really talks about self-assessment of the institute or the college or the school or the department. There's hardly a faculty meeting that talks about the practices that each member of the staff really engages in, the learning that they have and the challenges that they face in really engaging. So such kind of faculty meeting really help in the improvement and go a long way in developing an institutional culture that promotes reflection. The third aspect that I found was a monthly colloquium. Once in every month, there's you can teach a learning time. Like we have timetables set for children, for learners. At least once in a month, there has to be a space in the timetable which is set up for the learning of the teacher. And such kind of teacher learning time also needs to be placed in the timetable, which really motivates the teacher, which really motivates and really brings nuances into their teaching learning processes. These are some of the processes and practices. Conducting biannual seminars, research and academic teams at all different levels. This is one more concept that I would want to mention, which I got to know once again from a pedagogic gossip. And the principal very enthusiastically mentions about this pedagogic gossip. He says that when I go up with a new idea to the teacher, I know that I'll be challenged with it, but I place that idea in the form of a gossip to some of my teachers. Ask, ask them to take it up, experiment with the idea, share it with others, and then seek open, informal feedbacks for that idea. And as is with gossip, that it spreads, the idea also spreads, and I get to know a lot of aspects which otherwise, if I had executed any idea formally, I would not have learned. So I kind of introduce an idea as a gossip, put it up to my staff, allow them to engage, allow them to criticize, allow them to experiment, and allow them to freely talk about it. And in this manner, I tap the potential of informal interactions and get to learn a lot about what needs to be improved as a part of different aspects, weekly reflective journals, monthly self-appraisals, mentoring by the leader and pedagogical advisors, the other practices. The third part of academic leadership, people development. So, challenging the vision, the belief system, the values, and the attitudes. So, if people development has to happen, perhaps one needs to have what is your vision? What is the belief system that the institution has? What is the values and attitudes that the institution has? What is the mentoring mechanism that you have in the institution? You have a teacher development as important being placed in your institutional curriculum as is learners development. Is peer learning encouraged in the institution? Is there a strategy for learning which is very clear? Is there a culture which leads one? And unless there are these aspects clearly placed in the institutional setup, institutional value system, perhaps people development may not. And therefore, we largely see today institutions of learning, whether it is a college, a university department, or a school, have become more of non-living entities, more of institutions of brick and mortar, where just people come, they have their isolated places, they sit into their isolated places, conduct their isolated activities, and just go. There is hardly any life that is put into these setups wherein people engage with each other, engage in learning with each other, and engage into the assessment of the institution and see that the institution turns into a learning organization. We take up the third section, which is looking at reflective practice, the relationship between reflective practice and the art of academic. And here I would want to come back to the story that I was talking about, which I borrowed from the sports arena. That this is a very important information found in the fourth policy dialogue on teachers for education for all in 2010. And it reads, it is not lack of good intentions, efforts, or investment on teacher development programs. It is about teachers taking positive steps towards improving their professional practice through analysis of educational outcomes, meaningful feedback, self-assessment, and desire to be accommodative. And very clearly it mentions that there is sufficient investment that is made by the central and the state governments on teacher development in terms of in-service training, also in terms of in-service training, of course, but in terms of in-service training also. But still, uh, the ample research that we have, research literature on teacher training, says that trainings are not need-based. Uh, Teachers do not in training programs or learn in the training programs, and this policy dialogue says that it's not lack of investment in teacher development, or it's also not about good intentions or efforts in the teacher development program or the quality of teacher development, but it's just about teachers not taking positive steps towards improving their professional life. So when I, as a learner, go into a training program, I have not sufficiently assessed myself what I want to learn, how much I have learned, and now what is it that I come prepared with so as to improve my practice that I was doing. So somewhere there's a gap between what is being taught and what is the need. So based on this, unless teachers come together for their own learning, unless they plan on what they want to learn, unless they plan on how they want to learn, perhaps we will not be able to improve the educational process. And this has to come from the दिन तुम्हारी जिंदगी में फिर कभी नहीं आए. It will never happen again. What is the mindset that he would be having while he's writing this? What is the determination that goes into him while he's writing this? I'm sure he would have told himself what is it that he's going to reflect and practice, master, so that he does not get hold again on a similar kind of living. And I narrate this incident to make a point that every time that we enter into a class, what is the promise that we are making? What is the determination that we are carrying? What is the sincerity and the practice that we go with? I'm sure Sachin Tendulkar would not have had a glass of beer after this. He would not have sat coolly after this. Between the stimulus and response, there is also one thing, and that one thing, that is freedom of choice that every individual has. So when I say that, I think one needs to mute their mic. There's a disturbance. There would be a stimulus, and only then there would be a response. Viktor Frankl asked that how to respond between the stimulus and the response. There's a choice. There's a freedom to choose the way you want to respond, and that is the human freedom that all of us will have, even in the most dreadful times of life. So, while if we look at today's time, there is gloom everywhere. We hear the news of deaths, the news of corona being spreading every day, the increasing number of containment areas. So there's a lot of gloomy news all around us, but we still have a choice on how do we want to feel more gloomy about it. Do we want to say that, oh, we locked down, or do we want to say that we are safe in our own homes, we have an opportunity to live and do the things which we otherwise didn't have in the hustle of life. So between the stimulus and the response, frankly, there's a freedom to choose, and that freedom helps to develop our own circle. That freedom comes from our own reflections of what we have and the opportunities that we have. So behavior is a function of our decision. And therefore, how do we really use decisions to really transform our conditions, to transform our lives, to change the way we are and change the way our ethnic culture and institutional culture is. And here I'm using this Victorian representation of the Bloom's taxonomy, but this is kind of adapted by Peter Papa, and he uses it as a reflection for reflectional taxonomy. So when you say remember, it's about what did you do, watch, hear, or when you say understand, it is about how important was your experience, what was the event that has happened, what did you learn from that, how are you going to apply that knowledge that you've gained from your reflection into your into your new experience that you're going to generate. How and the analysis, how do you see patterns in your experiences? Evaluation, how well you did it, how well you could have done it, what are the gaps, and what is the new experience that you're going to create. So if you look at this in terms of the Gall's learning cycle, so once again it is talking about concrete experiences, reflection or observation on those concrete experiences, abstract conceptualizations, active experimentation, and again creating those concrete experiences. And you could conduct the entire, use the same taxonomy by Bloom, but use it for reflections also, which would really help us. So going back to the past events, listing down your experiences of those events, drawing lessons or documenting your from it so as to understand the event. Whatever new learning you will arrived at, you apply that learning, analyzing it and seeing different patterns, evaluating it to see your strengths and weaknesses, and creating new learning. Now, if you've got to undergo this entire exercise, how do you really reflect in practice or so these are some of the steps: react, record, review, revise, rework, and revise. Now, what the next two slides that we're going to talk about are about the tools for the practice. So we could begin by reacting in the sense deciding on the areas of practice that one needs to focus on. Recording one's own assessment or documenting the performance. And it is, for example, I've taken a lesson. I go back, try to recall my entire experience, document it, write it as a learned journal, review on what worked well, what not, what I need to try next time. Try to revise, in the sense, change or modify the plan that I have made, rework on it, just to say active experimentation in terms of also data, and reassess how successful were the new strategies, what changed, what couldn't change, what I need to change in the future. These are some of the steps which we could do. In fact, while there are a number of authors or researchers, scholars that have given different steps or different tools for reflection,